Welcome back. We are on day 34 of this war, and last night Donald Trump addressed the American nation in prime time about the Iran war for the first time since it began 33 days ago. And what he said, and what he did not say, and what a professor at Oxford University said about what he said, and what Time magazine revealed about what Hegseth was thinking when the war started, all of it together tells a story that is far more consequential than any single headline can capture. Let's go through it systematically, fact by fact. The phrase itself. Trump said, "We are going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We are going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong." Defense Secretary Hegseth posted 5 words on X immediately after the speech. Back to the Stone Age. Let's fact-check that phrase against international law before we go any further, because it is not simply a rhetorical flourish. Janine Adil, a global security professor at the University of Oxford, told Al Jazeera that if Trump's Stone Ages threat implies that the U.S. will destroy structures and buildings that characterize a modern society, then this would be illegal, because it implies directing attacks against civilian objects. An announcement that they will nonetheless be targeted wholesale would be an announcement of systematic and serious violations of long-standing laws of war. The statement is particularly appalling since it repudiates the claim that the United States is fighting the Iranian regime, implying rather a war against the Iranian people and society more broadly. CNN, the University of Oxford. International humanitarian law. Systematic and serious violations of long-standing laws of war. That is not opposition commentary. That is a named academic expert in global security applying the precise language of international law to the president's exact words. And international humanitarian law prohibits targeting civilian objects deliberately during war, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross. Now, let's look at the history that Al Jazeera placed this threat in context of, because it is directly relevant to understanding what Stone Age means as American military language, and what America has done when that language has been used before. The phrase bombing back to the Stone Ages is widely associated with U.S. Air Force officer Curtis LeMay in the context of U.S. threats against North Vietnam in his 1965 book Mission with LeMay. LeMay, who had played a central role in executing the World War II carpet bombing of Japanese cities, in which between 240,000 and 900,000 people were killed, had by the time of the Vietnam War risen in rank to Chief of Air Staff. CNN, between 240,000 and 900,000 people killed in LeMay's World War II bombing campaigns. That is the historical provenance of the phrase Trump used in a primetime address to the American nation last night. It is not a metaphor. It is a reference to a specific doctrine of total destruction of civilian infrastructure that produced one of the largest single atrocity events of the 20th century. After the September 11th attacks, Pakistan's Pervez Musharraf recounted that senior U.S. official Richard Armitage warned his country would be bombed back to the Stone Age if it refused to join the war on the Taliban. CNN Pakistan warned. Iraq warned in 1991. North Vietnam warned in 1965. Iran warned in 2026. The phrase has appeared at the beginning of every major American military campaign of the modern era. And the historical record of what followed each of those warnings is documented. America's bombing of North Korea during the Korean War destroyed 95% of North Korea's power generation capacity and more than 80% of its buildings. Al Jazeera's article notes that outcome directly. Those are the actual historical consequences of Stone Age rhetoric when American military power is applied without constraint. Now let's talk about what Trump did not say in his speech, because the omissions are as significant as the statements. Trump made no mention of deploying U.S. ground forces into Iran. He also avoided any reference to NATO after previously threatening to withdraw the U.S. from the alliance. He remained silent on potential negotiations with Iran and did not address his April 6th ultimatum for Iran to reopen the waterway or face harsh reprisals from the U.S. CNN, no ground forces mentioned. No NATO. No negotiations mentioned. No April 6th deadline mentioned. The President of the United States delivered a primetime address about an active war without mentioning his own publicly stated deadline that expires in 4 days. The deadline that oil markets have been trading against. The deadline that has moved twice already. That silence is not an oversight, it is a choice. And it tells you that April 6th is likely to be extended again. Some analysts had expected Trump to announce either an end to the war or an escalation in the conflict, such as ground operations inside Iran. But the U.S. president only gave the public and the media more of the same rhetoric, making 4 familiar points. The war is necessary. It has already been won. It must continue, and it will wrap up soon. All arguments he has been making daily. CNN. No new information. No new strategy. No new objective. The first primetime address to the nation about this war after 33 days contained nothing the American public had not already heard from Trump's daily social media posts and press gaggle comments. The speech lasted less than 20 minutes. Oil prices climbed more than 4% immediately after it. Now, let me share the most important reporting of this entire day because it comes from Time magazine, which conducted a deep investigation into the internal dynamics of the Trump administration before and during this war, and what it reveals about American decision-making deserves to be stated clearly. Key Trump officials, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, were surprised by the barrage of retaliatory attacks Tehran launched against U.S. and Israeli targets across the region, including in countries long assumed to be off-limits. The response shattered the assumption that Tehran would confine itself to performative retaliation. In internal deliberations before the war's launch, Hegseth had pointed to Iran's muted reaction to Trump's past attacks as evidence that calibrated force could impose costs on Tehran without triggering a broader war. CBS News, Hegseth expected Iran to respond with performative retaliation based on Iran's response to previous limited strikes. He was wrong. And Time found a named person familiar with his thinking who said Hegseth was caught off guard when Iran started attacking virtually the entire region and that it hit him like, whoa, we are really in this now. We are really in this now. That is the internal assessment of the Secretary of Defense of the United States 33 days into a war that his planning assumed would produce a different Iranian response. The Pentagon disputed this account and said it had anticipated and war-gamed every possible Iranian response. But the documented fact is that Iran did attack virtually the entire region: Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Diego Garcia, ships in Dubai waters, oil tankers off Qatar, a Qatar energy vessel, all things Hegseth apparently did not fully anticipate based on the Time reporting. The Pentagon's public denial of surprise sits uncomfortably against 33 days of documented evidence that Iran's response exceeded American planning assumptions. Trump told Time in a phone interview the morning after his speech that Iran was eager to make a deal to end the fighting, saying, "Why would they not call? We just blew up their 3 big bridges last night," and adding, "They are getting decimated," and saying that the claim Trump is not negotiating with Iran is sort of an easy negotiation. CBS News, 3 big bridges blown up last night. Iran's foreign ministry calls Trump's ceasefire claim false and baseless. Trump says it is an easy negotiation. Iran says there are no negotiations. The pattern of claim and counterclaim that has characterized every diplomatic moment of this war continued the morning after the prime time address, as though the address had changed nothing. Because it changed nothing. The Iranian IRGC Aerospace Force commander responded to Hegseth's 5-word post directly and publicly. Senior Iranian commander Sayed Majid Mousavi accused the United States of threatening a civilization over 6,000 years old, despite what he described as the United States' meager 250-year history, and warned that it was Washington, not Tehran, sending its soldiers to their graves, adding that American leaders were suffering Hollywood illusions. CBS News, 6,000 years of civilization against 250 years. That is the Iranian framing of this conflict. And it is a framing that resonates across the entire non-Western world in ways that American strategists appear not to have fully calculated. When Iran's military commander tells the world that America is threatening the civilization that invented mathematics, astronomy, poetry, and early agriculture, and does so while referencing America's own brief history, that message is not directed at Israel or at American voters. It is directed at the 2 billion people in the global South who view Western military power through a lens shaped by colonialism and who are watching this war with a very different frame than CNN's Washington Bureau. The Pasteur Institute of Iran, described by officials as one of the century-old pillars of public health in the Middle East, sustained damage in the latest round of U.S.-Israeli strikes, according to a senior government official, prompting renewed warnings from relief agencies about escalating attacks on health facilities across the region. CBS News, the Pasteur Institute, founded in 1920. Over a century of vaccine research, infectious disease control, and public health infrastructure for the entire Middle East and Central Asia region struck. In an active American bombing campaign, there is no military installation at the Pasteur Institute. There is no weapons program at the Pasteur Institute. There is a polio vaccine manufacturing facility, an HIV research program, and a tuberculosis monitoring network that serves populations across Iran, Afghanistan, and Central Asia. The consequences of damaging that institution extend well beyond Iran's borders and well beyond this war. Here is where the facts leave us. Trump said, "Stone Age and prime time." A University of Oxford professor said that would be illegal under international law. Hegseth echoed it in 5 words. Iran's IRGC commander called it Hollywood illusions. Time revealed Hegseth was caught off guard by Iran's actual response. The speech contained no new strategy, no mention of April 6th, no ground force disclosure. Oil rose 4% during the speech. The Pasteur Institute of Iran was struck. 65 days of civilization older than America was threatened on television. The phrase has been used before Vietnam, Iraq, and Pakistan. History shows what follows when it is. We will keep fact-checking every claim. We will keep reading the history. April 6th is 4 days away. Stay with us.